refer this to Medford's Office of Sustainability. I know our climate action plan references LEED only, but either or invite someone from the sustainability office at the city to comment on that as a particular goal.
Thanks. Member Rousseau?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I would be happy with an and. I don't know the chips. Is it the word chips all uppercase? Is the S?
It's CHPS. I can put that in the document, I think, if that's useful.
I got it.
Yeah, I didn't have time to do the research, but from what I've seen, it seems like there's some really important milestones for schools that we should be thinking about as people using the building.
Thank you. I actually, I don't particularly, not that I don't find the city's Office of Sustainability to be, I love them and all, but I don't particularly want their input here because they work for the mayor. The mayor is the person who will be funding this project. Well, the residents will. And I just don't feel that they're going to be able to offer an opinion that's based purely on our goals. Instead, they're going to offer an opinion based on what's financially reasonable. And so we're just going to be chopping down the potential before we've even started. I mean, if somebody comes in and says LEED 5 is going to cost us $1 billion for a high school, well, then we can sit and decide that's not a thing we can do. But and other times when that office has spoken about issues, there's always the start with whether we can afford it. And I think that's a conversation for afterwards, not before.
Right, that's fair. I think that's perhaps then included in one of the consultancies that the next section is going to refer to make sure that we have that consultancy in submitting our application.
Okay. Member Olapade.
The question about the, I guess, overarching overview or like the accountability. So because we're imbuing this committee, I think, with the overall voting power of the building creation, when it comes to actually like hitting these public input and stakeholder feedback, let's say like thresholds of actual input, are there ways for us to actually make sure that's happening? Not to suggest that like the building committee wouldn't be doing that, but more specifically making sure that we're garnering as much input as possible, just because that's a lengthy process that some parents, some community members might not be as able to respond when let's say a survey goes out immediately. So are there ways for us to, I think, try to keep us as honest as possible by trying to get as much input as possible, as just something that I've noticed?
Sure. So I think there are lots of ways to do that. One of the things that we will ask of the committee first is to prepare a report to the school committee. And one of the items for consideration is even in this like first early stage is the plan for community input. So I think that's a good mechanism to sort of include in like the monthly reporting in terms of like, what does stakeholder engagement look like? Because it will change over the course of the project. I think it's much less exciting in the first eligibility phase than it will be when you get to things like feasibility and schematic design. Like that's when, there's lots of planned input that the folks that we hire to do that work will come in and do. So I think it will change over time, but I think it's a good call out to think about in terms of like the monthly reporting of what has happened, what's coming up. And that might be a good way to make sure that we as a committee are keeping tabs on that.
Okay.
Ms. Bowen.
Hi, just one quick revision on the title of Curtis Tufts High School. It should not have the word alternative.
Okay.
If you can just change that, that would be appreciated. Sure. Thank you.
Apologies for that. Member Rousseau.
Thank you. Yes. On the issue of community engagement that Member Olapade just brought up, I believe their process is quite lengthy, and I won't pretend to be an expert on it yet, but there are mandatory community engagement activities we must perform, roundtables, all those other focus groups. Those are not optional. So I'm sure that what they actually look like is probably like much of the MSBA recommendations is kind of vague because a little tiny community somewhere out west in Massachusetts is different than the city of Boston. But yeah, we cannot get out of community input, which obviously we want. But I think including it is fine and great. I just think people should be comfortable with the fact that we absolutely will have to do that regardless of whether we want it, which we do want. So
Thank you. I just offered a suggestion, which essentially builds out number 3 and says that complies with MSBA guidelines and guidance from the Medford School Committee. So just sort of sets up that requirement for us to be having that dialogue with the school committee and the building committee together on an ongoing basis. Other questions about goals? Member So.
Thank you. Could we put the New England chips before the word lead? Just because the climate goal stuff is specific to the lead stuff, and thank you. And I would prefer definitely an and, not an or. One of those is definitely going to be far more strict than the other. I mean, they weren't written by the same people at the same time with the same data. So, I mean, I don't know how Member Reinfeld feels about that, but I'm a big fan of and, because if it's or, it's going to end up being whichever is weakest.
Yeah, the or was simply because I didn't have the time to do the research, but I'm going to trust the experts in the inboxes and
Thank you.
or I accept your revision to my amendment.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about this section? Is there a motion to approve the changes that we've outlined in this section?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the changes outlined in the goals section by Member Olapade.
Can I second it? Oh, great.
Seconded by Member Branley. Roll call.
Member Branley. Wait,
Yeah.
am I muted? Sorry. Member Graham.
Yes.
Member Olapade.
Yes.
Member McLaughlin absent. Member Reinfeld.
Yes.
Member So yes. Mayor Longo-Kern absent.
5 affirmative, 0 negative, 2 absent, motion passes. Okay, moving on. The next section, now therefore be it resolved that the Medford School Committee, let's do the first 5 of these, and then we'll carry on. Number 1, establishes the Medford Comprehensive High School Building Committee. Said committee may be referred to as the School Building Committee. Acknowledges that the significant investment members of the committee are making in the future of the city of Medford and Medford Public Schools, and regrets that the positions cannot be compensated in compliance with MSBA rules and regulations. Grants the authority of the School Building Committee chair to recommend extensions of member terms subject to approval by the Medford School Committee. Recommend replacement of non-participatory members subject to approval by the Medford School Committee. Work with the appointed committee to maintain various subcommittees, including but not limited to communication and community engagement, sustainability, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, finance, and other committees as established by the chair. D, work with the appointed committee to convene external advisory committees and consultancy on an as-needed basis. E, provide monthly updates to the Medford School Committee. And F, act in accordance with MSBA established rules, regulations, and requirements on behalf of the School Building Committee. Number 4, requires a report to be presented to the Medford School Committee regarding the School Building Committee's governing structure, scope, resources, community engagement plans, website and document management plans, and training no later than May 20th, 2024. And number 5, establishes the initial term of members beginning April 15, 2024, which is the start of Medford's eligibility phase is May 1st and ending January 26th, 2025, which is 270 days from the start of our eligibility phase, or the successful completion of the eligibility phase, whichever is sooner. The school committee desires stability in the committee and will extend member terms throughout each phase of the process at the recommendation of the chair. So that is numbers 1 through 5. Questions, comments, thoughts? All right, I'm going to move on. And we are going to keep making progress. So let's just clean up number 6, and then we'll talk about the membership as one fell swoop. So number 6 requires the school building committee to comply with MSBA guidelines and align with, but is not bound by the Medford School Committee Policy BDF, which is our process to appoint advisory committees to the school committee. So any questions about number 6? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Number 7, defines the membership of the school building committee as A, no more than 15 voting members. B, appoints the following members of the committee. So voting members are myself, Mayor Brianna Lungo-Kern, Maurice Edward Vincent, Suzanne Galusi, Peter Cushing, and Marta Cabral. And in parentheses, what you see there are the requirements from MSBA that the various individuals fill, just to show sort of a tie between what we have to do and what we are doing. And then non-voting members, Bob Dickinson, who's the local budget official, to be determined, the MCPPO, Chad Fallon, Joan Bowen, John McLaughlin, and Thomas Dalton as non-voting members. So I'll stop there. Questions about the appointed members of the committee? Member Olopati.
Yeah, a quick question when it comes to the non-voting members. For number 3, Chad Fallon is the director of the vocational program. Does it not make sense to have him be involved as a voting member as if we believe that the building's going to stay in the same place and be the same composition, that the vocational program's equally involved in that process of what the needs are for that student body?
Yeah, I actually, that's actually a really good question. I had a conversation with Chad the other day. We actually have started working through some of the requirements that the vocational school will have to pull together as part of the eligibility phase. And we were meeting and we did talk about that. He reports, I believe, to Dr. Edward Vincent directly, and Dr. Cushing is responsible for overseeing vocational education as well. So he felt comfortable that the vocational school is adequately represented from a voting perspective, and was absolutely okay with and fine with being a non-voting member of the committee. He's really excited about the work. He is already planning a presentation that will come to the school committee about sort of what he sees as the future and the opportunity and the possibility. It's awesome. There's lots of exciting stuff to come. So certainly from my seat as the chair, I will be looking for Chad's input often, as we will all the non-voting members. And he felt comfortable that his voice was well represented from a vote, if that helps. Any other questions about the appointed members? Seeing and hearing none. Okay, so let's move on. We are then talking about applications for interested members who include 1 additional school committee member, 1 city councilor, and applications for 7 additional open positions from the community as voting members. Medford public school teachers and staff who are Medford residents are welcome to apply. So that would be those 9 positions I referenced earlier, and they are at present all voting members. So I want to circle back to Dr. Edward Vincent's question about alternates and whether we want to consider adding some non-voting community members. So I just wanted to bring that back up because I think this would be the place for us to discuss that. Member Rousseau.
Thank you. When I think about a jury, you have the alternates that are there, they have to be there. So if somebody has to leave for whatever reason, things can just carry on. I think it's a very interesting idea. And I guess what I'm wondering about is the pseudo appointed alternates or whatever, the appointed alternates. The expectation, if I was to imagine how that would work, is that they would be expected to show up, that they would be participating in the conversations, they wouldn't have voting rights. And then should a voting member need to leave or drop out or whatever, it would be just a seamless process to move them into the voting seat, which is definitely better than somebody, we go to the list again, we pick somebody else, they come in and they do not know what's been going on in the conversations we've been having for weeks or months, or frankly, years at this point. And that would put them at a disadvantage, and it would kind of slow down the entire committee, because you should bring your new people up to speed, which means repetition of things everybody else already knows. So I do like that idea. The only concern I have is managing. I mean, we would have the 15 voting, wait, is it 15 voting members?
15
Yeah.
voting members, yes.
And then 6 additional members, so 21 members who will probably always be there. So, I mean, if we added 2 more members who are alternates, I do see the value. I mean, the commitment is so significant. And I don't know whether or not folks added as an alternate would in any way feel okay about that. I think that, when we've make the decision as to who those people are, we would, I guess, prioritize the list of people we want to make the voting members from the community. And then we would have to sort, like we got this teacher who's also a building trades person and lives in Medford. Like, this is like a person should percolate to the top. And then, where do we, how do we sort becomes a little uncomfortable. But I think if we're open about it and say, look, we want you on the committee, but we want you to be an alternate, and they can accept or not, like anybody else we offer the positions to. I think there's some value there. I mean, this is just not a minor commitment. So I think 2 people as alternates is something I think would be interesting. It just makes the meetings a little more unwieldy. But that's my thoughts.
Member Reinfeld.
Yep, I support the idea of alternates. My big question on that is, if we lose committee members, we're going to need to, for the most part, replace that particular expertise. I think this is a little bit what Member Rousseau was referring to. And so being really thoughtful about what that means, because the building committee we're choosing this not by lottery, we're choosing it very much based on expertise. But I think it could certainly be added. I guess my question to the superintendent, is this specifically for the members of the public, or are we thinking about the designated voting members who are actively fulfilling particular roles? Because I think if it's for the public, we can add a question to the application saying, would you be willing to serve as an alternate? And then we would need to specify that the alternates are essentially are they a non-participatory but non-voting member during the meeting, and they move into a voting role, or is it they're observers for the whole process? So what does it mean to be an alternate?
I just thank you for that question. I was just thinking about where the 15 voting members, and again, right now it would be about 21, 22 potential participants. It ends up getting pretty large. In my mind, I like the number of 15, but you do want to have options. But where Member Rousseau just commented about meeting during the summer and really spelling out what the time requirements are going to be, I'm hoping that the people who sign up will really be able to make that commitment and stay for the duration of the process. Because to your point, Member Reinfeld, if we have a person with a specific expertise and due to, an unforeseen circumstance, they have to step down, and we replace a body, but they don't have the expertise, then that's a gap once again for the committee. So initially I just was thinking if the idea was to always maintain 15 people or an odd number of people voting so that if you needed to have a tiebreaker, you wouldn't have to worry about that being an issue. But also, while we're here and talking about it, one of the participants on this call is one of our other administrators, Dr. Lori Hodgson, who is the principal at the Curtis Tufts. And she also had just expressed, she would be very happy to be involved in this process, similar to Chad Fallon, as a non-voting member, but being able to weigh in on this new school that we're going to be designing, and bringing her expertise to the conversation as well. And I know that's an additional district-based administrator, but she does have a wide breadth of experience, and I think she could be a very valuable contributing member to the team. And she would be happy to, be part of that team in a non-voting capacity, but participate and be involved. But I just, again, thinking about the total number, the larger the group gets, the more difficult it becomes to manage. And, trying to find what is that actual ideal number. I'm thinking actually we probably would prefer to definitely not go up over 25. I mean, if we could probably stay under 20, that would have been even more ideal, because once it gets very, very large, you have a lot of wonderful opinions and perspectives, but then at the same time, it's so many opinions and perspectives that it makes the work take significantly longer. So
Right.
When I originally suggested to have one or two alternates, I hadn't thought about your point, Member Reinfeld, about the specific expertise. So if we have an engineer, we don't want to replace an engineer with, someone who has another expertise, but for the purposes of the building, we would really need to have the expertise of an engineer or, someone else with a specific skill set that's being called out.
Member Rousseau?
Yes, thank you. It's funny, like the more we talk about it, now I'm back to round two, maybe no alternates, because I think what we would want to do is when we look at the list, first of all, we don't know what the list is going to look like. We could have 35 people with all this technical expertise apply, and then boo for us because we got to figure out who to pick. But when people apply initially, they, their own circumstances could change. I mean, because we could be talking about, 5-6 months from now. And then, you might not have wanted to apply 5 or 6 months from now. So we don't really have a process in here for what to do when we need to add members. Do we just go back to the we have the list that we had from the first time we did this. My preference would be that we go to this list, and then if we cannot be successful with this list, then we put another thing to the public and be like, we need more people with these specific skills if you would apply. But I think going back to the list is probably the approach I would recommend. As for alternates, if we end up with alternates, I would definitely think an alternate has a voice at the table. They just don't get to vote. I mean, I would not, personally, I can't imagine volunteering to sit silently with my expertise on a topic
For 5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years with something I'm interested in, and I want to say something and being told, no, I'm sorry, you can't speak. Also, these are open meetings, so I don't think we actually,
Yeah.
I guess this committee will have to design its own rules on how it wants to operate around public input and all that stuff. But, the only thing I like about, the more that we talk about this, the thing I most like about having alternates now that we say you're going to be an alternate is that if they actually show up, that when we need them, there will be a lot less effort involved with bringing them up to speed. That said, the tasks that we have to accomplish, it's not like we have a task that will take 6 months. It's tasks, 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 tasks. So we're not going to be bringing them up to speed on decisions and things we've already done and are completed from 9 months or 3 years ago. We're going to be bringing them up to speed on the things that are being worked on at the moment. So maybe that isn't as big of a lift, actually. So I'm kind of wishy-washy. I feel like it could go either way on this.
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
I just was going to comment. I think based on the new rationales that were presented, I would withdraw my recommendation for alternate because I actually feel like it, you know, the reverse is true. We could have one alternate engineer and one alternate environmentalist expert, and those positions never have a vacancy, and then another area has a vacancy.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a moving target, and it's going to be very difficult to predict that. So I think as the application goes forward, to really ask the members of the community that are interested, if they could really do a due diligence and just say they really want to commit to this process so that we have a real working group that is going to be able to contribute for the duration of the project. Thank you.
Do we need to put into this document the procedure for filling vacancies that arise, or is that something that the original appointed committee will say, if we lose members, this is our replacement plan?
I think it's in
We have a section that talks about the chair to recommend extensions, recommend replacement of non-participatory members. And so we could just simply add here, based on the initial application pool where possible. I think at some point that pool becomes really stale, right? So that it may not last forever, but maybe if we do that, that sort of describes what our intentions are there.
Yeah. And because I agree with the process that Member Russo I think it was Member Russo outlined of, we go back, if that expertise is there, we take it there, or give that first refusal and then put out a call for specific expertise if needed.
Yeah. Member Russo?
Yeah, no, my gut, of course, this is not based on anything, is that like once people sort of reach this threshold of being committed for a year, 2 years, like they're going to be like, no way am I stopping now. So I feel like this is going to be an earlier, I mean, with the exception of people who have, like all the usual things that happen in life that can make that determination for someone. But the people initially who get selected, who are participating, they'll know quickly whether or not they've bitten off more than they can chew in their own personal lives. And so that list probably won't be terribly stale early. I think going back for another round of applicants is something I think we should just think about in the future if it comes up as necessary.
Member Reinfeld, did I see your hand?
Yes, we did not address the question of Ms. Hodgson. And
yes,
whether so I would certainly support putting her as a non-voting member in the same capacity as Principal Fallon. It does bring us to an even number, which may or may not, although not voting, not on the voting, I guess, just in the room. I guess it's just pushing the numbers up. Are we and I was also looking back, is MEEP represented in Medford Family Network? How are those, when we're talking about all the programs in the building, how are those represented here?
Sure. So I'm just going to add this so I can finish my thought.
And thank you, Principal Hudson, for being here. How you come in.
So Joan has responsibility over MEP and reports to the superintendent, of course. The MFN am I correct that the MFN reports to Ms. Galusi? Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So they are sort of covered by extension through both voting and non-voting members.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the two changes, 1 to 3B and to 7?
Motion to approve?
Aye. Motion to approve by Member Rousseau,
Second.
seconded by Member Olopade. Roll call.
Member Brandley? If
Can you give
wanna
us a
give
thumbs up
I
or a
can-
thumbs down?
You can all hate me for this. I'm so sorry. Yes.
We've all been there. Member Graham?
Yes.
Member Olopade?
Yes.
Member McLaughlin is absent. Member Reinfeld?
Yes.
Member Rousseau, yes. Mayor Longo-Farren is absent.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 2 absent, motion passes. Okay. Next section. Directs the superintendent to create an application form for membership of in the building committee by 5 o'clock Friday, March 8th. So that is a week from Friday, to go out in the weekly newsletter. And there's a series of questions being asked that we reviewed earlier, but full name, full address, contact information. Why do you want to be on the building committee? Are you related to a current school committee member? And if so, how? Will you require an interpreter? Do you have access to a computer and an internet connection to participate in Zoom meetings? Are you a teacher or staff member at Medford High School? Do you have experience in school building projects? If so, please explain. Do you have experience in large program communications and or management? If so, please please explain, not complain. What other relevant expertise or unique perspective do you bring to the process? Are you a Medford Public Schools student? Are you a caregiver of a Medford Public Schools student? If so, please list grade in schools. Can you commit to a minimum of twice monthly committee, subcommittee meetings held on Monday evenings for approximately 2 hours, beginning at 6 p.m. and held in person? Can you commit to participation through the entire eligibility phase of the project, which may extend through January 26, 2025? Are you willing and able to commit to this appointment through the entire life of the project, which may last up to 7 years? Will you actively support and participate in a public campaign to secure funding from Medford's taxpayers for to pay for aspects of the project not directly supported by MSBA? A series of demographic questions, including age, gender identity, sexual orientation, household income, educational attainment, what language you mainly speak at home, racial and ethnic identity and disability status. And finally, are you a registered voter? And if yes, please indicate your ward and precinct. And then just a little bit further on the application, the form will be posted to the website and communicated through the usual mechanisms the district uses, including translations to predominant languages on Friday, March 8th. The form will open on Friday, March 8th and close on Tuesday, March 26th. Valid applications must meet all requirements. Submitted within the application period. The applicant must be a current resident of Medford, Massachusetts. The applicant cannot be a close relative of a Medford school committee member, i.e. children, parents, siblings, or spouses of children's parents or siblings. All the required elements of the application have been completed. Questions about this section? I'll make it a little bit smaller. Maybe we can get it all in one place. Maybe not. Any questions, comments? Member Reinfeld.
Yep, we need to add email address or phone number. How do we contact these people? Whoops.
Okay. Thank you.
And then do we want to know if they are a teacher or staff at a different school in Medford. We have high school. I was torn on this, and so
I guess that's a good question. Thoughts, Member Rousseau?
I don't think so. I mean, if they are, that's fine. They're just applying as a member of the community. I think when we think about selection, which not all of these questions are about selection, but this one certainly seems like it is. You know, we may, well, I certainly would want to include a Medford High teacher who is applying. So if they're not a teacher at Medford High and they're at a middle school or elementary school, you know,
Mm.
that doesn't seem, I mean, it's not that it's not relevant. They may have all these other skills and we're going to pick them anyways. But the fact that they're at the Missatook, in my mind, doesn't really provide the focus of what we're looking for in the people who will be on the committee. I just envision we're going to have plenty of people applying.
if it were, yeah, if it were me, I'd be putting it in other relevant or
Yeah.
I want to be there.
Yeah.
And just to make sure, just to confirm that Medford High School encompasses vocational. Actually, and I suppose Curtis Tufts as well, because we are looking at whether or not this becomes one facility.
That is a good catch.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this list? I actually did get a note also requesting that we pass the application by the city's DEI office. So I wanted to put that on the table for consideration as well in this section. And we could add it here if there is agreement on that. Member Rousseau.
Yes. I mean, I understand why. I would just wonder about, well, first of all, if we're going to do this, then it really needs to end up being a policy that all of our requests to the community of this nature go through the DEI office. And, you know, there's nothing particularly special about this part on this particular thing. We have done this at least 3 other times or 4 other times since I've been on the committee, and we've not done that, although there hasn't always been a DEI office. So, I mean, I think I would be okay with it if we thought about it in the context of all community surveys we're doing. And I do worry that, look, the DEI office doesn't work for us. We have no authority there. They have no authority here. So if we send it over and they don't get around to it, which, I mean, I don't doubt for a second they'll take it seriously and quickly work it, but we're putting somebody in the critical path who has no authority over us and we have no authority over them. And I feel a little uncomfortable with it from a simple process perspective in doing that. Not at all concerned about the content of the response, but also if we do send it there, we do have to have, the assumption is we're going to have another meeting to do this, to deal with the response. So if the DEI office says, I would change the wording on this and I would change the wording on that, and we've just approved this wording, then we're having another meeting to approve the recommendations or not approve the recommendations of DEI office, which, by the way, might also be an uncomfortable situation where we're like, we like this wording, we use this in education, and the DEI office says we should use this wording. I don't particularly have an interest in that kind of like, well, who's right? Which way should we go? We can't call the DEI office to come to our meeting and provide input. They're completely separate part of the government. So that's sort of my concern, not at all with what the content of a DEI office reviewing it would be.
Member Lapade.
This isn't so much a part of that. That is a good point, or I see the suggestion from Member Rousseau. Another thing I'm noticing is with with this section, point 8, subsection was at 6, the point about requiring an interpreter. I think that we should also be considerate of the fact that this application, is it going to be in other languages or is it only going to be English? Because I think that that will then restrict or limit the amount of people who are going to actually be able to be involved, even at the application phase. Because if they may need to require an interpreter, I'm going to wager that their ability to actually read the English language might be limited as well, potentially. So I think that we should consider, do we want to try to have this translated to the most immediate next spoken languages in the community? Does that matter to us? Things like that. Just because, if we're gonna have an interpreter and we say we want to do that, I think that also should happen,
And Member Lapati, we do provide for that in this language here and translations into the predominant languages. So that's about the application form. So we're good. Member Rousseau?
Yes, I mean, there's also this very uncomfortable thing that we aren't talking about that I think happens in circles in government when we're having these conversations where we're like, we want to include people whose primary language may not be English or they may not speak English at all. And then we kind of have to come up with reality. And I hate to use the word reality because it sounds like, I don't know, it's a very awkward conversation, because if everything had to be, and if they had to have an interpreter at every one of these meetings, we have 270 days. It does not have any exception for whether or not everything is interpreted. So if we couldn't conclude this process in 270 days because we were translating on the fly in every meeting, the entire conversation going on, would we be able to finish this process? And that's an important question. So it really gets to the root of the fact that government isn't designed for inclusion 100%. It's designed around an assumption that everybody's speaking English, and how we would want to handle that. If we have an applicant who is an expert in all these things, and we want this person to be on there, we're going to have a conversation around funding, because we're going to have to fund an interpreter for all these meetings and all these documents. And then we're going to have to sit down and have a hard look about how much additional time would we be required to complete the process if we were on the fly. I mean, I don't think we run any Zoom meetings that I'm aware of in this city where every single thing is being interpreted for a participant of a board into another language. And it would all have to be interpreted for them to be a proper participant in the board. So it's a very challenging thing that I think I wish there was an easier answer, but I think that's sort of the elephant in the room on this issue. And I think we of course should cross that bridge when we get there. But it's something that I think about and I worry about, because I would want to be able to include people who are not speaking English or using sign language. And I just worry about how we would actually accomplish that. But that's a different story.
Are there any other questions, comments, or changes to this section?
Not to the application. I just want to make sure that the application is posted with the necessary context of the goals of the committee, and that I think is outlined early on, right? It can't just be a form. Perhaps it's
Correct. I will
this resolution, and that explains what our goals are and who they're joining.
Yeah. I will work with Thomas to make sure that the form includes all of that. Before
I think the goals that we outlined are really helpful to say this is what this committee is looking to achieve, and
I agree. Is there a motion to approve the changes that we have made? There's changes to 8A3 and 8A8.
and the shifting of the numbers with the addition of, yes. Motion to approve.
Motion approved by member Reinfeld,
Second.
second by member Olapate. Roll call.
Member Branley,
Yes.
Member Graham,
Yes.
Member Olapati,
Yes.
Member McLaughlin is absent, Member Reinfeld,
Yes.
Member Russo, yes, Mayor Longo-Kern is absent.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 2 absent, motion passes. It is 6:14, but we are in the home stretch, so hopefully we can make our way through these last 4 things pretty quickly. Number 9, directs the school building committee chair, mayor, and superintendent to review the applications and provide a recommendation to the Medford School Committee for the appointment of 1 Medford City Councilor, 1 school committee member, and 7 community members no later than April 8th, 2024. Further directs that the superintendent will provide all valid applications to members of the Medford School Committee upon request. Number 10, directs the school building committee chair, mayor, and superintendent to recommend a vice chair of the school building committee no later than April 8th, 2024. Number 11, directs the superintendent to announce the school building committee on the district and project website no later than 1 week following the approval of the school building committee membership by the Medford School Committee. And number 12, directs the school building committee to hold its first meeting no later than May 1st, 2024. All meetings are public meetings and will be conducted in accordance with the open meeting law using Robert's Rules of Order. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I worry a little
Member Reinfeld?
Sorry. Yes, I worry a little bit about getting all community members up to speed on Robert's Rules of Order, but if that's how open meeting laws have to be, that's how it has to be.
Yeah, and we will, the mayor has been able to secure training for other commissions. I believe the charter study committee went through a similar, so we'll bring in somebody to help accelerate that process, I believe.
Great.
The other request that the mayor had was to potentially move the April 8th date. April 8th is a committee meeting. The next committee meeting is not until the 29th of April. And so we would, if we did move that, we would also have to move we would have to sort of slide our May 1st date and our report to the school committee on May 20th. So that was the other question she asked us to consider in this meeting. So I will open that to the floor. Member Russo.
I certainly appreciate that the mayor wants that this is a recommendation. My concern is just that our eligibility opens on May 1st, and that is not something that we can slide or change. The state has determined that, and it happens whether we're ready or not. And if we do move it later than April 8th, then we will certainly not be having our first building committee meeting on the 1st. And people will still not have had a chance to be trained on open meeting law and Robert's rules. And I feel like we're going to be moving into the middle of May before the first meeting happens. And, that whole, what's that process they have in meetings, the forming and norming that has to happen. So we're going to be in June before this committee is doing any real work. I just very much, I understand that April 8th feels like it's around the corner because my Lord, it really is. But because of April vacation, I would not be in favor of that move because it really just kind of hoses us on the May 1st start date. And as I think everybody here knows, we do not want to be dilly-dallying. That's the technical term.
I completely agree.
Member Brantley, okay.
Completely agree with that. Absolutely. We cannot wait.
Okay. So superintendent, what we can do is set a meeting. I know the mayor's calendar is challenging, so maybe we can set a meeting now in anticipation of when we can begin that work to put the recommendation together for the committee so that we are ready for you.
I was going to actually offer a friendly amendment because of the April vacation week. since April 8th is a scheduled regular meeting, is it possible that the committee would be open to just doing an additional special meeting on a different date other than the 8th?
We could do that. I wondered though, I think we will also have budget meetings scheduled during that time.
That is true.
Yeah. So, how about this? Maybe we leave it as it stands, and if we have to make, some movement of the timeline, we can come back to the committee and let them know. Member Rousseau?
Yes, you started to say something, and that reminded me also that like open meeting law does allow scheduling related changes to happen without formal meetings or any postings of any sort. So this is actually part of the resolution for which we can just have a group email, and that is acceptable. I like the dates being written down so that we have a plan. But if they need to move for whatever reason, we can move them without scheduling a meeting to do all this work again. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Member Reinfeldt?
Yes, I have a question for Dr. Edward Vincent. I'm wondering what the status of the project website is as per the last resolution to set that up.
I will definitely be able to, I don't have a formal answer right now. I will speak with Thomas and see if I'm able to get more information on that. for you.
Thomas?
Yeah, so we're just working on pinning down a domain, a URL. The URL from the resolution was already taken, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just looked.
Yeah,
It
so
wasn't when we wrote it.
yeah, so Dr. Cushing's been working on getting a different suitable URL. I think we'll probably have that done very soon, and then it's just a matter of Lisa Miller, our website architect, and I will put together a kind of preliminary page, and we'll get it published. We're just basically waiting to pin down a URL, and then obviously to do the necessary work to pull one together.
Thank you. Member Rousseau, did you have your hand in the air?
I did. I feel like when you said that, I was going to start singing a song about that. I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution as amended.
Motion to approve the resolution as amended by Member Rousseau. There a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Reinfeldt. Okay, roll call.
Member Branley,
Yes.
Member Graham,
Yes.
Member Olapati,
Yes.
Member Reinfeldt,
Yes.
Member so yes, Mayor Longo-Kern is absent, and Member McLaughlin is absent.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 2 absent, motion passes. Are there any other motions for tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Member Rousseau,
I can second.
seconded by Member Branley. Roll call.
Member Branley,
Yes.
Member Graham,
Yes.
Member Olapati,
Yes.
Member McLaughlin is absent, Member Reinfeldt,
Yes.
Member so yes, Mayor Longo-Kern is absent.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 2 absent, motion passes, and the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience, guys.
Thank you.
You,
Thank
everybody.